Bruce Arians and I have had plenty of conversations with Tom recently that led us to believe there was a realistic chance he would want to come back. Tom is the greatest quarterback of all time who's still playing at an elite level. With this decision now made, we will continue to move forward with our offseason plans to reload this roster for another championship run. And again, the timing of this is so critical as I bring our insider Jeff Darlington into the conversation as well here. The timing, doing it right before the free agency period begins so they can make their plans accordingly. So critical. Jeff Darlington, you've been so close to Brady on this circumstance for many years. What can you tell us behind the scenes?
Well, Greeny, you know what's probably so interesting to me about this is that when I think in retrospect now about the last 40 days and perhaps even maybe the weeks that preceded that, was that to me, you never try to get into somebody's head when they're making this decision, but it always felt like Brady was more simply trying to avoid a farewell tour, just tired after a long season, than overly fulfilled by his career and ready to hang it up. It felt like he was making a short-term decision as opposed to a long-term one. And I think the one person who recognized that more than anybody was Bucs general manager Jason Licht. There's a very thin line between being the desperate ex who just thinks that the person's going to come back to them and the person who's cautiously optimistic about it. And Licht walked that line perfectly. He was having conversations with Brady behind the scenes, sort of just saying, hey, we're here if you still want us. You know, he sensed it. And I think that is why Brady ultimately is returning to the Bucs and why they got it done at a time when they can still put together a roster and make a championship run. Licht saw it. He left the light on as he said it. And ultimately, Brady said, you know what, I'm not done. I'm coming back.
Did other people see it? You know, Jeff, I mean, you talked to so many people because we speculated a million times on here about he was just unwilling to close the door, even verbally, interviews with Jim Gray and anywhere else he went. And yesterday morning, that conversation that came out with him and Ronaldo, did other people that you know around him sense that he was seriously considering this?
I think that people sensed all along, even before he announced his decision to retire, that while we all see Tom Brady as being this methodical, decisive person, there were those around him who saw him as being non-committal in general to a lot of things. You know, points in the season when he said, you know, I'm going to fulfill my contract. Other times when he's like, I think this might be it. And it never felt as maybe decisive as we always expect Tom Brady to be about everything. And as a result of that, that was probably the early sign that maybe that this decision would ultimately be questioned even by himself in the end. So I'd say that, yeah, the warning signs were there that he would probably do something like this, but ultimately we've just come to expect when Tom says he's going to do something, he does it, and in this case, it just wasn't the case.
And one more quick one, Jeff, before I bring the rest of the group in, is the expectation that he will now be sort of a Pied Piper in Tampa? That Mike T put up a whole list of potential Bucs free agents a little bit earlier in the program. Should we now expect, with Brady coming back, that a lot of those guys will return?
Well, absolutely, the timing is exactly that, so that they can make a run at this, guys. We saw it with Senator Ryan Jensen. Chris Godwin already felt like he was going to come back and he can make that playoff run after he recovers. The Leonard Fournettes are the ones that are the questions, right? You got guys that were signed one-year deals to run it back this last year. Jason Licht went all in. Those guys are now the ones who have the decisions to make. But absolutely, we should be very clear on this. Tom Brady has been in communication with Jason Licht throughout this to make sure that he was kind of, sort of, as much as anybody, setting those chess pieces in place. Mm-hmm. So if there's one person, again, who's not surprised by it, it's the person who has to pull the trigger on those deals, and that is the general manager in Jason Licht.
Orlovsky, jump in here. As you listen to Jeff and all of this latest, what's your perspective?
What's the relationship between Tom and Bruce Arians like right now?
Jeff?
It's actually good. I would say that, I'll be just candid about it. I had drinks with Bruce Arians last week at the Combine. Talked to him about Tom. And there was no rift. There was nothing there there was no sense of animosity or frustration. Certainly not to the degree that we've seen it with other coaches and players. There's a great respect there. And I think that Tom understands that he's starting to feel out Bruce throughout these last 2 years himself. But I got a very clear sense that these guys are on the same page. And I got a very clear sense last night from a text from Bruce Arians that if there's one person who's most thrilled about this in Tampa, it is, in fact, the head coach.
People having drinks with Bruce Arians, not a short list, I wouldn't imagine. Mike Tannenbaum, as you hear that, your thoughts here on the job that Jason Light has in front of him now and how this could go.
I want to expand the conversation. What about a guy like Jarvis Landry? Jarvis Landry wants to leave Baker Mayfield. We saw OBJ leave Baker Mayfield, go to Matt Stafford, and but for a tragic ACL would have made a lot of money. If I'm Jarvis Landry, I could go on a one-year deal. They lost Antonio Brown. I'll go invest in my future, maybe take a one-year deal, as Nick would like to do, for less money. But in all seriousness, I think the aura of association, Greeny, bears repeating. Not only is it the list of their free agents, how many other players would want to go play for Tom Brady, Bruce Arians, no state income tax, play on grass? It's an ideal situation.
But by the end of this week, Dominique, will they be the team to beat in the NFC?
I think so. I think they'll be up there because of all the things that we pointed out. And I do think that the value that he brings to the franchise, not only is it that he's taking less money and also people wanting to come there, it's the culture being set. It's so very few players that have this kind of basketball-like power that when they show up somewhere, it becomes their organization. When Tom Brady leaves an organization, I believe the culture changes immediately. When he comes to one, it also changes immediately. So having him back, I think, is paramount for this organization.
We will talk much more about the serious part of this, but thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.